It's a sound argument. If it's valid in form and the premises are sound, the conclusion is demanded by the syllogism. All right, that's the end of that. You can turn that off for now. All right, another question. How can a metaphysical being like God create a physical universe? The simple answer to that is a miracle. There are certain things about God and His nature and His abilities that the finite mind cannot and will not ever understand. And I believe one of them is the answer to this question. I do not hesitate to say this, that a metaphysical being like God is not dependent upon a physical universe. But a physical universe is dependent upon a metaphysical being. That's what we're talking about. That's the emphasis of our lesson today on the existence of God, the implications of evolution, and also the idea of correct reasoning. What is the adequate cause of all that we have, all the universe, all that the universe contains? The only adequate cause is what? A metaphysical being. Now, how did he do that? What's the mechanics of it? I can't say. All I can say is that the material universe is dependent upon a metaphysical being, and that being is God. All right, who's up next? Any follow-up questions to that at all? We can go into other arguments for the God being the originator and creator of the universe, but I think that one is sufficient. Next.
I got the question, how old is the earth? Bruce said, that's in the Bible. Jeff, you got the Bible, so you get that question. I don't recall facts and figures, numbers so well, so I'm not going to spend much time speaking about particularly those kinds of things. But I'll tell you, let me start off by saying I had a conversation with a well-educated geologist one day, and we were talking about uniformitarianism. And he said, well, you know, most geologists don't believe in uniformitarianism as such anymore. It's a punctuated, catastrophic uniformitarianism. And so, you know, talking about that, listening to what he had to say, I said, so basically, you believe that the time it takes to form a given structure in the environment and the geology is the time it takes, and if you find one that doesn't fit your model, then you say it's a catastrophe. He said, yeah, that's pretty much how it works. And I appreciated his candor about that. And we went on to talk a little bit more about it, and he himself talked about some things that I had read about things such as index fossils and carbon-14 dating, and my memory on the details of how that works doesn't work so well. But my understanding is that there's some assumptions built in. It can be demonstrated, for instance, that things like carbon-14 dating is infallible and perfect and perfectly regular. There are some assumptions about what kind of what it is that you're testing. Can the nitrogen, can it migrate within the test subject? You know, I don't know the details about all these from a geologist standpoint, but I know that within the community that uses these things, that there is some concern about the validity of some of the results. For instance, it's been said that I think, say, 35,000 years is the reasonable limit of what can be tested. I don't understand why that is, but I know that there are some people with the credentials that have those concerns. Even people who don't believe in God have those concerns about the dating methods. Now, you also have to understand that, you know, if you're going to sit on the side of the road with a speed gun, you've got to calibrate that speed gun so you know the cars are going by at the speed that the display shows. And it's the same way with a lot of these different ways of measuring things, is that there has to be a calibration, a check against it. And if you calibrate such things with index fossils and then go circular, it doesn't help much. You know, how do you know what an index fossil tells you about the time period of a given strata. Well, you carbon-14 date it. Well, how do you know your carbon-14 dating is right? Well, because we dated a section of strata that had such index fossils in it. Well, how do you know that that section is correct? You know, and it becomes circular. And I realize that carbon-14 dating has an application. I recognize it has a value. My point is that it's not fallible. And I bring all that up to say this. You know, you dealt with the philosophy of uniformitarianism, not a science. That's not empiricism. You're dealing with a problematic way of testing the Earth in order to come up with an absolute date and say, I know that this date is perfectly acceptable, you know, whether or not it's, you know, 3 million years old or 3 million years in one day. There's fluctuation. The fluctuation can be much more than that. So, you know, there are flaws in both of those areas. And the third thing along with that is that why do you believe such things? You know, do you have a faith in that process? You know, you have obviously a trust in that. The third thing there is that a lot of people have studied the Bible and come up with a model for an age of the earth, and that's based on primarily the genealogies that you read in the Bible. And I do subscribe to that because I have confidence that the Bible is the Word of God. And people will think that's far-fetched on the basis of their faith, their trust in a different philosophy and a dating mechanism. And so I have faith that the Bible is the Word of God, and they have faith in, I use that term loosely, in something else. So maybe that answers the question. Somebody follow that?
I was hoping just to ask a question later.
Okay. Anybody else? Next.
I was given a question based on a statement made in my lecture. The question is, why do we not see the signs of evolution today? Then I believe an answer was actually given to the question given to me. If evolution is true, should we see half monkey and half man? Well, I did allude to the statement in the lecture itself that stated if the theory of evolution is true, then we should see somewhere in the world an ape in different forms coming to the point of standing upright to be a man. I did find a website I do want to quote from. This website is worldscience.net. I want to read some things on this. This might take a few seconds. Bear with me. Human evolution has been speeding up tremendously, a new study contends, so much that the latest evolutionary changes seem to largely eclipse earlier ones that accompanied modern man's, quote, origin. The study, alongside other recent research on which it builds, amounts to a sweeping reappraisal of traditional views, which tended to assume that humans have reached an evolutionary endpoint. And that's one thing that evolutionists have said, that we have reached an evolutionary endpoint, therefore there is no evolution today. A new study by scientists are now suggesting that not only is it continuing, but it has speeded up at a rapid pace. The findings suggest that not only is our evolution continuing, in a sense our very origin can be seen as ongoing. A geneticist, not only involved in the study, said, Gregory Cochran of the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, Utah, a co-author of the study, said that the research may force a radical rethinking of the story of modern human evolution. Quote, it turns it upside down pretty much, end quote, he said. But skeptics question some aspects of the work. It goes on to suggest that it is actually accelerating. Some scientists are already adhering to that particular philosophy now, while others still deny that evolution continues. It is felt that since we have reached the state in which we have as man, logical, reasoning, and thinking beings, that evolution is not needed anymore. Who's to say when evolution stops? Just because man has reached a certain plateau, does that mean we have stopped evolving if evolution is true? It would appear, if the theory of evolution were true, then the evolutionary process would continue, which eventually, as you can see on some sci-fi movies, would produce superhumans. produce men and women